Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Coming Out Stories from India series. Coming out, what is it? Coming out is a term used primarily in the LGBT community when a queer person shares about their sexual orientation, usually with friends and family. Nicola and I decided to launch these Coming Out Stories from India to ensure we all work together in changing the narrative. The last few years since my own journey, I've been looking for role models, stories that can help me in my own, life. There were hardly any, and if at all, not in depth enough. There's a common thread running through these narratives, though, that the journey has been challenging for most. However, we also very pleasantly discovered that not all stories are that of pain, suffering, and trauma either. Our coming out stories from India started taking shape as we started discovering that that we do need role models to bring to our audience real people, real stories, lived experiences, keeping in mind the unique complexities of India. Hopefully, these coming out stories will help pave the way for those who are in any phase of their coming out journey. I'm Raga Olga D'silva, or Totally Out Now, as you know me. Today's guest is someone I have huge admiration for. I sneak in quietly during his Insta lives, and I learn so much each time. He writes on the relevance of mythology in modern times. Trained in medicine, he worked for 15 years in the health and pharma industries before he plunged full time into his passion. Author of 50 books and over 1,000 columns, several with bestsellers, he is known for his TED Talks, his TV shows, especially Devdutt, and his innovative views on culture, leadership, and Indian approach to management. I'm personally very eager to read his latest book on marriage, about 100 stories from India's, as he says, favorite ritual. Please join me in welcoming Devdutt Pattanaik.
Hi.
Namaskar, Devdutt. You are in Mumbai, and welcome to our Coming Out Stories show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us. Now, Devdutt, I'm very intrigued because every time I get onto Insta Live, hear you speak so much in Hindi. And I don't know whether I'm more fascinated with your Hindi or with the stories. I love it. So where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Mumbai. My parents migrated a few years before I was born from Odisha, which is in the eastern part of India. And then they migrated via Chennai, which is in the south, to Mumbai. And then I was born in Mumbai. And, so Mumbai is home for me. So I speak, Marathi, which is the local language. I speak Odia, which is my mother's language, my father's language, and of course English, because that's the language of communication. And Hindi, which is the national language.
I love your Hindi, I must say that. I've heard you also speak in Marathi at some point. I'm just trying to remember. I don't know where, but maybe on the literature festival. So I just want to set the background in terms of how was it growing up in Mumbai, within your family, within your extended family, within the communities that we all have in India.
So I grew up in a suburb called Chembur. So it's a suburb in Mumbai. So it's not South Bombay. It's not, which is known when you travel usually to Bombay. It's and it's the eastern suburbs, which is not the cool western suburbs where Bandra and Warsaw is there, which is where the film industry is. Very quiet neighborhood, very middle class, very conservative. But the best thing is the building where I lived in. It's called Azad Building. We had neighbors from all over India, which I realized later that I had people from South India, North India, East India. So I grew up listening to many languages and different religions. And, we had Muslim friends, Parsi friends, Christian friends. I went to a Catholic school. And our school, I learned Ramayana. I always keep telling, I learned Ramayana in a Catholic school. My teachers like Lobo and Rodriguez, we would do these little plays, we would do nativity plays and we would do Ramayana plays. And nobody at that time, now the world is very different. I think it was a much innocent time 40 years ago. So I grew up in this very middle class, conservative. By conservative, I mean Saturday holiday. What do you do on weekends? You go to the temple. There is a nearby temple. That's the walk you take. Then you go out and eat bhel puri and some snacks out there. So that was your routine. You didn't think of it as a religious activity. You just went with all your sisters and friends, and that's it.
So how
No
large
point.
was so how large was your family growing up? You have sisters, you have brothers as well? Yes.
No, I have two sisters. I'm much younger than them. So they are about 8 and 9 years older than me. I was born much late. And my mother always very openly would say that I wanted a son, which later would make me cringe. But she treated all of us equally. It's not that my sisters were treated differently, but she said, I prefer a son. She was very clear about her. Yet my father didn't, think in any way. He was too busy working. He was the typical father, work, and my mother managed the household. So we grew up in a very happy. I never saw my parents quarrel. Later in life, I learned like my father would give all the money to my mother, so my mother had all financial control. She took all the decisions. So we were it was a very matriarchal in the sense my mother did everything. My father traveled a lot, and that's the household. And my sisters sort of they went to the Catholic school, the girls' school. I went to the boys' school. So they went to St. Anthony's. I went to Our Lady of Perpetual Succor High School, which, we all would have heard all the jokes around the name and have to spell it out to people every time. It's SUCCOUR, So we grew up that way. And I still am in touch with the school. I try to help out wherever I can. So that was the Bombay we lived in. It's very simple life. Saturdays, Friday nights when my father would be there, we would drive to see a movie and have dinner together. That was the big thing to do. Watch a movie with the family, eat great dinners at Flora restaurant, especially Chinese food. So these are iconic restaurants in Bombay, going to Excelsior and the suburbs had not developed as much. Mall culture had not come. Internet wasn't there. So that was the world I grew up in.
So what a beautiful world you grew up in, because most of the people we have on the show talk about a lot of stress around childhood, but you're talking about going to a Catholic school, which I went to as well, a convent as they call in India. And then you talked about having, your weekends would be spent going to temple. So basically, obviously, you grew up in a matriarchal family structure, which is beautiful. Did it put any stress on you as a child too? Because you were, in India, we talk about male child all the time. The boys have so much of pressure. Did you feel any pressure at all?
My stress was only my studies, because typical middle class family, studies are the most important thing. Highly competitive ecosystem, and I also was amongst the top rankers. So your whole thing revolved around on Parents' Day, will you get the prize? And so my stress was education. There was no other stress at that time. At least I don't remember any stress in childhood other than the stress of education and getting the top rank and the 10th standard, the tensions, and
So brilliant. So as you're growing up and you're in school, just take us back to that time and when we all have our first crush, right? Either on teachers or with our fellow classmates. So did you start experiencing that?
See, I have I don't think my sexual awakening took place in school at all. But I mean, now in hindsight, I realize that I was a boys' school. So you only saw boys around you. I wasn't amongst the boys who would peep into the girls' school. And I would keep wondering why people wanted to do that. Because good boys don't talk to girls. That's the thing. So I thought I was a good boy. I never realized this came to me only in college. I was a late bloomer, one can say. My even though puberty happens and all that, I don't think that was the dominant force in school days. I mean, I have a vague memory of having a very close friend, but very vague memory of feeling him. But that's it. Very, very, very light memories of sexuality in school. I remember being teased for having a feminine way of talking. But that's also because in elocution competition, when you have teachers, you're trained to talk in a particular way, which looks feminine. When you grow up, now you realize, oh my God, that's not the way you talk it. But I think you were mimicking your teachers. So I do remember being made fun of as feminine, pansy. The word pansy was not there, but it was not traumatic. I mean, I thought they were just jealous because I stood first in class. So.
They were jealous. But so tell me, when you were in college and you started discovering, and I don't know whether that's the word to use, but we discover ourselves, our own sexuality, or the crushes. So did you start thinking? Because I'm sure during that time, as at least in my time, there was no reference material at all. We didn't even know the word gay, or homo was the only word used.
So it was very organic for me. It happened really in the 10th standard. Two, three things happened. I went for an insurance policy for a doctor, where I had a medical examination, and the doctor asked me to, strip, because they have to check your genitals and all that. I know that now after doing medicine, but that was a very erotic encounter for me. I have very strong memories of that. I mean, not the doctor did anything. He was just very clearly remove your pants and all that. But the idea of being, I think I became body aware. And at the same time, it's very interesting. There is a very famous English serial called Jewel in the Crown, right? And it was being shown on Doordarshan at night. And I would stay up late night to watch this. And in this film, and I used to feel these certain urges and sexual desires, but I couldn't quite know what it was. And I saw the serial and I was very excited to see the actors, and there was a very strong sexual undercurrent in the story, which I couldn't understand, but I could feel it. And I was drawn to the male characters. There is, I think, the English actor is Tim Pigott-Smith, and there was a Indian character called Hari Kumar, or I don't know, he's a very famous actor. I mean, they've done many roles, and I saw them, and I was feeling a strange drawing. I could feel this erotic energy there. And in one of the dialogues towards the end, he says he uses the word sodomite, the character. And I heard the word, I didn't understand what it means, so I opened the dictionary, and it said male homosexual. And I read it, and I said, oh, that's what I am. It was that spontaneous, it was that, I just knew it at that moment. I can't explain it. I've never had a sexual encounter, nothing, but I knew I was feeling something. And it's a very strange thing. I keep telling people it was a very intellectual approach. I got the word. I think that's why I spend all my time writing about words and explaining words. And that word sort of made sense to me. I said, that's who I am. And I was I just knew it. And when I went to college, I think the Indian actor was Art Malik. Yes, Art Malik and Tim Pigott-Smith. And if you see the serial, it's a very sexually charged story. So that is my memory of. So I think that was 1986 when I didn't come out, but I knew it, and then I was like, okay, now I was curious about it. So I started reading books on sexuality and sex, and very few books were there, right? There were not many books, and nobody talked about the gay sex. Was the little thing in the corner. But then, in Bombay there is this thing. You have these second-hand bookshops which are sold. It's in Matunga, where on the road you'll find books of all kinds from all over the world. And I got hold of a book very famous book by John Reckie called Sexual Outlaw. And I remember sort of exploding to this book. And remember, I have not had any sexual experience, nothing. I really don't believe a single gay person exists in India. So my approach is intellectual. I'm reading books. I'm reading anthropology books like The Prehistory of Sex, which is talking about how archaeologists, patriarchy influences archaeology. So very strange mix of books, but I knew I was gay. And in college, I would be staring at men. And when I went to medical college in Bombay trains, you encounter men brushing each other, and this kind of a slow access to this world of masculine and beauty. And but nothing terrible or negative. It was just, I was like lost. Oh my God, what's going to happen to me? Where am I going to go? There doesn't seem to be anyone like me. Maybe I have to, migrate to France, learn French in school,
You're
somehow
back.
associated with the gay world for some weird reason. And that was the world I lived in.
This is so interesting because you somehow, at least you have had access to books. You went to your roadside bookstores and started finding books. A lot of people I speak with, or I had no access. Or if you picked up a book, you dare not take it home because somehow your parents had this. There's no secrets in our house, right? In our homes in India, smaller homes, and so I don't know, how did you manage to get books on sexuality, and how did your family react to it if they saw it?
See, books were respected in my household. Education was non-negotiable. My mother would, if I say I want to buy a book, money would come. That, and I did come from upper middle class family. I mean, money was not a issue until my father retired. Then we had a period when money became an issue, because in those days you didn't have mutual funds and pension funds of that sort. So we had a series of years where money was tight. Otherwise, money was there. I always was used to, not affluent, but comfortable. And books was never questioned. Never questioned any book. My mother wouldn't see a book with the word sex on it. It's not a bad thing. It's like I remember my sisters reading books called Mills and Boon books, and at night they would be reading things and giggling, and I would wonder, why are they giggling? So I would pick up the book and say, what is so giggly about these books? And I would read these things about men crush, and it's if a gay man reads a Mills and Boon, it's a gay fantasy in a way, if you just sort of project yourself and you see these hot men kissing you. So I started reading it, and my mother said, why are you reading these girls' books? That was the only time I saw this differentiation of why you're reading girls' books. And as a child, as a boy, I used to dress up as girl. You do this and perform in front of your mother. That was perfectly considered to be he'd grow out of it kind of things. Nobody saw it as weird. I mean, I remember dressing up as Zinat Aman and for what is that Kurbani film?
Leila
Yeah, those kind of things. I vague memory, not which film. So all films I don't remember, but I remember dressing up in some Zinat Aman kind of goggles and Amitabh Bachchan and Jackie Shroff came in one of those magazines in a looked nude photograph, which was very bold in those days. And so I grew up with those things. But yeah, you knew that sex is something you don't talk about. Good boys don't talk to girls. Girls don't talk to boys. My sisters were very conservatively, like they didn't think about it. They said, no, you don't talk to boys. It's just not done. My sister would get upset I remember one time my sister came home saying this boy approached me and she was livid that he had talked to her, that it's not done. And so it's very strange. It's not that my parents were, but I don't think dating and all these ideas were something, we were conservative in the sense marriage is the goal. I mean, these are the words that you hear around you. Marriage is the goal. Divorce is not good. Live-in is unheard of. So you just study, you get a job, you get married. That's the world you live in. So I lived in a well, really. And I was wondering where will I fit in, because I think I was super confident about my sexuality. And I didn't know what to do about it. So that was my trauma was, what do I do about it? Because now the body is demanding and you're looking at men and suddenly a straight friend of yours says, why are you staring at me or something like that? Or people notice things and they start, the outside world also says, tu kya, aisa hai kya? And you're like, okay, how do I talk to them? Because I have no problem, but clearly they have a problem. And, so I didn't know how to negotiate that. That was the difficult world, because sometimes you would sort of cross the line with some of your male friends and you're like, they cringe and you're like, okay, something's wrong, I shouldn't do this. And that was my trauma, but it was more not like, oh my God, I'm gay or something like that, but how do I live a gay life in an ecosystem that doesn't seem to be supporting this thought? That was the great.
That's interesting, because at that time, I'm sure there was Bombay Dost was just about launched.
So Bombay Dost played a very important role in my coming out, because I didn't know what to do. And honestly, it's there where journalism plays a very important role. And I keep remembering there was a magazine called Society Magazine, and it had an article on Salga and South Asian lesbian gays in Los Angeles. And they started something called Trikone. And I read this article, and I was at that time in medical college, and I read it and I said, oh, there are Indians who are gay, maybe I have to go to San Francisco. And I cut this piece of paper. I was 16 or 17 at that time, and I was not an adult, and I had enough brains to say that when I turn 18 I'll contact these guys. And when I was 18 I couldn't find the piece of paper. I was like, oh my God, I kept it here, where did I go? So I wrote to the editor of the newspaper, who became a friend of mine for 20 years, a very good friend of mine, Suma Varghese. I wrote to her saying that I'm gay, don't try to convert me. That was my first line in an inland envelope. I had read this article so many years ago in your paper. Can you please put me in touch with them? I wrote this mail very confidently and posted it to them. And very kindly, she sent me back a copy of Bombay Dost that had just been published. And that was 1990. And I think that changed my life completely, complete change in my life. Because suddenly through that magazine with lots of adventures, I was part of the gay world and I felt I was fish in water. And honestly, Suma played a very important role. Had she not done that, she could have just ignored the letter. Some small things like that. Internet had not yet come. It's 1990. I was in the medical college, and AIDS was the big thing. And HIV, as medical students, we were familiar with AIDS, and suddenly India was talking about gay sex because male sex was being discussed, and so gay was no longer in the closet in society. People were talking about gay sex. Unfortunate that the AIDS crisis, but it played a very key role in presenting the gay world, mainstreaming it, mainstreaming it. It sounds, macabre and morbid, but really the HIV/AIDS crisis, sort of in the medical world at least, we had textbooks, we had, even though it was illegal, Section 377, it was illegal. The government of India, and that is the maturity in India, the law and society don't always align with each other. Doctors were talking about HIV/AIDS, they were talking about male sex. They were not talking about gay and lifestyle as much as it's men have sex with men, and they were talking in a very practical way. So I grew up that way. For me, my college days, when I was finally a relief because the gay world had opened up for me. The HIV/AIDS conversations were happening, and intellectually, as I said, I was sorted. I mean, that was never an issue.
But
The issue was sorted.
did that put any fear in you in the whole HIV, the AIDS conversations? Did it make you feel that what if my parents got to know? Would they worry about me, or would they stop me?
Well, I also had a very strong independence streak, and a very, very strong independence streak. And I was growing up at that time. I saw my sisters getting married, and I saw this whole story of marriage crumbling. Both my sisters didn't have the best of marriages. And I realized that marriage, they were not like my parents. You see, I grew up seeing a happy married couple, right? And we just assumed all men are like that and all families are like that. Then you grow up one day and you realize that men can be jerks. And it was a shock to me because my father treated my mother with so much of respect that my brothers-in-law's behavior took my sisters and me by surprise. We were like, the world is a cruel place and people can be nasty. It was really the bubble bursting. So my late teens and early 20s was traumatic. And worse was my relationship with my parents started getting sour because I realized that they were very conservative and saying marriage is most important. You can't leave the husband. And I was like, they are not good men. How can you not stand by your daughters and telling your daughters that no, marriage, you have to stand by the husband, whatever it is. My mind, I think, was growing up and I was realizing that this beautiful illusion of childhood was changing. People could be cruel, your parents could disappoint you, and I think that was a traumatic period. And I was telling them about my AIDS not AIDS. I was telling them about my sexuality, but I thought, like most Indians, that my parents know. And I think they were ignoring it because I would keep Bombay those copies. I showed them the film Maurice by Ivory Merchant, and I showed my parents this film. I thought that's enough to tell them that I'm gay. Why am I seeing this film Maurice, and why am I? There were these lots of gay films coming out, but all with the HIV/AIDS undertone also, and sad stories where gay men are always dying. Yeah. And I would show them to my parents, and they would watch it, and they would never. And I just assumed they knew it, and this is a typical Indian way. Don't ask, don't tell. Until you suddenly one day are a doctor, and they're like, "Why are you not getting married?" And I'm like, "But I have been." And that's when I realized, oh, they don't want to see it. They're pretending that it is not there. And that was a typical reaction. Like the way they pretended not to see the problems in my sister's marriages. They were pretending. They wanted life to be in a particular way. And I think that was growing up. I was realizing I was not like my parents. I was not like the world was not what I thought it was. And I think I have to make my own path. And I think my autonomy came out. My independence came out at that time because I said, I will not succumb. I think there was a strong urge that I will not let these people ruin my chances of happiness. Fantastic. So that was growing up. That was growing up.
Fantastic. So Devdutt, then at what point you went to college and you discovered yourself and you've got things happening in the background in your family? How did you basically come out? Did you come out to your siblings, by the way, before you spoke to your
No,
parents?
not
No,
really. With my
nothing.
parents, I mean, I just moved on with my life, assuming that life will happen. And then one day, I had moved to Hyderabad because didn't get my. I was in a sort of a relationship which was going not so pleasant. My parents met my boyfriend, and but they didn't know it. I kept telling them he's very close to me, but we were not articulating it. It was like the Indian way. Tum samajh jao na, samajh jao. Why are you? I mean, please understand. Please understand. I mean, it's you don't articulate these things, and I think my parents knew but didn't want to see. And so then it came to a confrontation when I was in Hyderabad. I moved to Hyderabad for work, and it became that, okay, we have put your name in a matrimonial column and we have got these girls photographed. Now please select. And it came to that point. And that's when shit hit. And I was like, what nonsense? And we had a loud screaming session. And I think I was 30 by that time. And I'm like, and I am giving lectures to gay groups and HIV/AIDS groups, and I'm sharing everything with my parents. It's not that it's hidden or anything, but it's not that I've told them I'm gay and I've not said it in so many words because I just thought that was not a decent thing. They should understand. But then I said, okay, this is it. My father said, who never had a conversation with me, he said, what about our family line? And I was like, oh my God, I burst out laughing, saying that what is the silly things? I couldn't believe my parents were saying everything that I thought, foolish people say. And I was like, oh my God, I'd never expect. My parents disappointed me, honestly. I felt that I always saw my mother as a very modern woman. I always saw my father as a very matured man. And that's how the neighborhood saw them. And I realized at heart they were very conservative. And so I was a little disappointed with them. And I was like, no, I don't care what you think. And my life is my life. I'm there with you. But you see, my father took it badly. And within a few months, he passed away.
Oh, sorry.
He had a heart attack and he died. That was in around 2001. And of course, the drama happened, Indian family dramas. You killed your father. And I said, no, I didn't. He had a heart condition. Let's not be dramatic about it. Because I don't take all this emotional blackmail. I think that's unfortunately my quality. I don't take these things. So you can't play those games with me because I'll outplay you. So I told my mother was like into this major depression and she tried to do all that. And I was like, you're playing a screen performance. It's not true. I am what I am. I love you. I care for you. And I realized the depths of my mother's anger when I bought a house in Bombay. And that's a very big thing, please. In Bombay, buying a house, and I was in my early 30s, and she didn't come to see the house. And that was the first time I realized how upset she was with me. She said, she gave me money, but to help me pay some of the loans and all that, but she said, I will not step into your house. Very dramatic, very Hindi film. And I'm like, okay. It hurt me a lot. It really hurt me because I was all alone buying the house. And my sister sort of said, please understand where she's coming from. I said, no, I will not understand. This is not done. And I was very angry. And it's a very famous story in my friend's circle. And if you check out a website called Agents of Ishq, there is a letter of mine. Which, it's for 7 years. Every Sunday, I would go to meet my mother. And it became like folklore in my friend's circle. I would go and have chicken curry with her. And my friend told me, there was not chicken curry. It's her love for you. And she would cook for me. And she had arthritis. It was very difficult. And I would go to eat lunch and we would sort of talk and then have tea and I'll come back to my house. And she would never come to my house. And after, it took her 7 years. And one day I just stopped calling her. I stopped inviting her. I would always tell her, come. And she would no. And I learned something in life that, the more you push people, the more drama they do. So you don't push people. And then they don't feel wanted anymore. And when they don't feel wanted anymore, they turn around. And, unfortunately, I had to be the parent to my child, to my parent. And my mother finally decided to come to my house. And then, because that time my career was taking off, the mythology thing started picking up. And then I was Devdutt Pattanaik, the public figure. And, suddenly success also helps. It's sort of, you want, and it helps. So I know how it helped. And my mother would always not say, I don't care for money. But I'm like, yeah, but that's my bank balance. And she'd be like, nice.
I love the way you're just being so honest and, it's like, this is how it should be, right? Transparent about what actually goes behind the scenes. And I love the tips you've given us, by the way. I think it's important to know family dramas. like I call the Nirupa Roy moment. My mom
New
had it.
Roy moments,
Then
absolutely.
it's a, we just love it. When my mom got to know, I'm talking about 20 years ago, I'm in New Zealand with my little kids. My mom actually tried to kill me. She brought this, I know for a fact that she wouldn't have plunged that knife in me, but that knife was being held here and everything was about her. I had been cursed. How could I have a daughter like you? I mean, like, Nirupa Roy, right? That's what Nirupa Roy would have said
Yeah.
in all the films. So our parents learn from Nirupa Roy's and what the Nasir
We
Hussein's.
don't know how to deal with these situations, so we take refuge in stories. And now I know it. I mean, from a purely neuroscientific point of view and understanding what's going on in the world, and I just realized that it's very difficult for people to understand. I realized my parents had imagined their life in a particular way. Their daughters would be in this particular way, their son would be in a particular way, and nothing worked out. Nothing. The son they produced was not the son they thought it was. The daughters had husbands who were really nasty people, and they were like, why is the world so cruel? What's went wrong? What did we do wrong? And I think they were surprised. The life shocked them. And then things go. My father's profession went through a bad patch. My sister's marriages were going through a bad patch. Then my sexuality emerged at that time. My career was going nowhere. So then we all went to astrologers at that time, like good Indian people. Ki Shani hai and Mangal and all the planets are in the wrong places. And but it helps. I think it's therapy. When you go to the astrologer, it's really an Indian form of therapy. And sort of despite being mentally very strong, I realized one important thing which I tell all young gay people, that do not lose focus on your career, because ultimately you have to pay the bills. If you don't pay the bills, you are dependent. Like, I know so many of I became part of a gay group called the Gay Bombay. We started it. I was one of the founding members in the late 90s, one of the founding members. And and it was really, it's still not a legal group. It's a what is that called? Informal safe space. And in Bombay, what happened is there was no gay culture as such. We had people who would meet privately for gay parties, and the language was based on self-hatred. There was a lot of use of feminine vocabulary, and very violent feminine vocabulary, slut shaming. And as a middle class boy who was raised in a conservative, I found that a little distasteful, the kind of language that was being used, because we were told this is bad language. You don't talk like that in public. And I was like, they are normalizing these words, which are bad words, and I'm not going to normalize it. And then I realized Gay Bombay was full of young men who were thought the same way, and they wanted to meet on Sundays at McDonald's, because that was the only public space available, to discuss. And we realized how poor we are in India, because we would meet at McDonald's and we would request people just buy one burger so that we are occupying space. So McDonald's doesn't feel, who are these people hanging out here? But people couldn't afford that coffee or that one burger. I mean, we realized how young students, we have no money. We cannot afford that. And we would meet there and discuss life. And I think that was a great, I made the best friends. We are still friends 30 years later. Now I sort of support the group from the outside, with the younger generation taking care of the same thing, the same issues, the same stories, the same conversations. And now, of course, Humsafar came along, and then more formal groups came along. There were great parties, like groups like Salvation, and lots of groups started throwing parties. But it started with Gay Bombay played a very important role. We were not political. We're very clear. We're not political. We're not going to talk about HIV/AIDS. We're only going to talk about good things. Go for picnics, go for movies, organize parties. I have a friend who organized party every week, literally, for the last 20 years, every week, every month. That became, because he went through a bad patch, he got married, and he said, this is my way of giving back to society. And that's what, and now, because of lockdown, we don't have those parties. And now, of course, the world is different. That led to more people throwing parties, and new groups emerged. I saw that happening, and the internet comes, and Planet Romeo comes, and gay.com comes, and suddenly you're part of a grinder, and these are new worlds. There was a time when we used to go to Bandra station and wait and look and cruise, a word which nobody knows anymore. And as, again, middle-class guy, shocked, oh my God, what am I doing? Going to a public place, looking for men. This is not what decent people do. Those were my awkward things.
Yeah, so
That
interesting because we've had like Sridhar from Kashish, right? Kashish Sridhar Rangayan, and he talks about this as well, cruising, how it was so difficult and so different those days. Now people talk about, oh, I don't have the right app to find my, yeah, but you can
it's
still,
fun. The world has changed. The world has
yeah,
changed.
you still
In
have an
small
app.
town India, it's still prevalent. I mean, you can go to. I always tell people, you go to any village in India, any town in India, go to the ST stand, where the ST is the state transport buses, and wait. And if you don't catch too many buses, somebody will notice you. That who is this boy who is not catching a bus? He's looking to ride something else.
Devdutt, I've got a couple of more questions. Like, I mean, there's so much to talk to you about, but a couple more important ones is like, I've heard of aggression in the gay community. And I've heard this very commonly being discussed about how you would invite men over for an encounter, for an intimacy, and in the morning they would just walk away, sometimes with a stereo or your video, and there was nothing you could do because there was no law. So did you ever face those kind of things?
See, you're calling a stranger to your house, you better be smart, right? Let's be very clear. You're having a stranger to the house, it's not going to. I think it's also how you are prepared for the world, right? It's like going to any work, or any business deal that you do, marriages. So I think I was my survival instincts were very strong because I saw what had happened to my sisters after a proper heterosexual, well organized marriage and how dark it can be. So getting a stranger to the house, you should be alert. You can't just be foolish about it. And if you're going to be inebriated state, you are opening yourself to vulnerability. You are breaking the law. At that time, Section 377 was very much there. And I had one or two negative encounters, but it's very interesting. I had a negative encounter where I had an encounter in public with someone, and it was a very pleasant time. And then after that, he wanted to take my money away. And I was in college at that time, and I was like shocked. And the guy gave me 20 rupees to go back home. So it was not, how do you explain this? Because I got into the cab because that was enough for me to take a cab, because I thought I'll go home by cab. I couldn't bear to take, it was by bus, and I thought I'll take money from my parents. But the cab fellow saw me looking scared. He said, "What happened?" I said, "No, somebody stole my purse." I couldn't tell him what happened. And I think he figured out what had happened, because why were you in that lonely place and all that kind of things. But he was like, "You should have told, we would have helped you out." And I just said, "I want to go home. I just want to go home." So that was my negative encounter, but it was not as negative as some people have had quite nasty encounter. But I became alert after that. I became a little alert after that, and I was a little careful when I would call people. And then over time, I would sort of tell them that the whole world knows I'm gay. So if you try to act smart, I will go to your house and tell your mother. You will have, and I would scare the shit out of them.
See, so many good.
I have your number. I will go to your house, and I don't care if I am humiliated. So I played the game, but then that's also, and I was careful about who I called. But the best thing about the gay world is you get to meet people from all social backgrounds, all communities. I mean, it is beautiful because you get to meet the rich, the poor. I know rich family boys who are in the closet because they will not inherit the millions and forced to marry women. And I realize money doesn't do anything. So
tragic, for sure, tragic. That is our tragedy, isn't it? And
family. I don't think it's our tragedy. It is the foolish parents, because the parents have lost the love of their children. So they have lost the love of their children. They'll never be loved because the revenge will be taken when they are on the hospital. That's why I know children who went to America because they didn't want to come back home. They're saying, our parents are cruel. We want to go to America. We'll never come home. We'll throw them in old homes. And that's the punishment that children give their parents. And we don't realize the anger comes out in some form or the other, because one day you will stoop and stammer. And when you didn't support your children, they won't support you. Yeah. And that already exists in our country. And I know that. I know children who are deliberately cruel to their parents, saying that they destroyed my life. They got me married. They ruined my children's lives. I hate my children because I'm not what they want me to be. Transgenders, it's horrifying what they go through. And money in the world doesn't help them.
I agree. So Devdutt, then is it easy enough to have relationships in the gay community? I'm talking about the gay community. And do you feel that you have had long-term relationships? Because that's another misconception, right? In the within the parents, kya hoga tumhara? What will happen to you? Where will you find a partner? I've been with mine for 15 years, and it's a long term. We brought up our children together, right?
I always tell people of this lovely man who married this lovely woman in his 20s. They lived happily. At the age of 60, the man died, and the woman died at the age of 90. And I'm like, for 30 years, this widow was all alone. Please tell me, how is it different from a gay man living alone or a gay woman living alone? One of us in a relationship is going to be alone. Someone is going to die before the other. It's life. That's the way it happens, whether it's heterosexual or homosexual. In a couple, you won't die simultaneously. You're not going to commit sati and burn yourself alive. You're going to be alive. One will die and the other will be alive. And they'll be alive for a long time. And in a society like India, where remarriage is frowned upon, you will be alone. One of you will be alone. So don't give me this, that how will you live your life alone? I tell my mother and father, I would tell, one of you all is going to die. And I remember when my father died, my mother one day looked at me. She said, my father's dead for 14 years. How did I live? And I said, that's what life is all about. Right? That's what life is about. We will meet people, we'll share lives, sometimes happily, sometimes unhappily, some for many years, some for short years. I've had one short relationship. Right now I'm in a happy relationship. We don't know how long these things last. Even Buddha said nothing lasts forever. Look at Buddha's wife. She thought it was from marrying a lovely man, and one day she woke up and he had left her, to become the Buddha. Has anybody thought about what Yashodhara went through? What does it mean? Was she allowed to remarry? Was she allowed to have another relationship? We don't talk about these things. We valorize men who live their own lives, but we don't think of abandoned wives. So
True.
that's life. And coupledom is not heaven. It's a aspect of life. Good to have it. And if it's a good relationship, it's fabulously nourishing. If it's not abusive, being in an abusive relationship is worse. I'd rather be single. I'd rather be single than be in an abusive relationship. And if I have a nourishing relationship, why not? And you can have nourishing relationship with friends. It doesn't have to be sexual. There are different kinds of relationships. I think this heteronormative model is horrifying. It's worked in the industrial era and the Neolithic societies. We don't live in those societies anymore. And we live in the .com era, and we have got Grindr, and we have got Tinder, and we can have friends. I think we glamorize coupledom too much. I love, but
I love it. Then the last point is on you coming out. You came out publicly after 377, right? That's when you told the world. At least that's when I got to know about that Devdutt Pattanaik, this Devdutt Pattanaik.
So all my friends knew about it, my family knew about it. In my personal relationships, my corporate world knew about it, because when I was working in the corporate work, with the HR department, I would always walk up to the HR and say that I'm gay, is that okay? So I was very open in that sense of the term. I was open where it mattered. So, my bosses would know about it, and my HR department would know about it, because in case there is some kind of an issue, I would tell them very clearly that I'm a gay person. Is that okay? You never know these things. And luckily, I had very matured HR leaders and CEOs and CEOs, and from very conservative families. I worked with all kinds of Marwadi families, Gujarati families. Privately, they were all, I've met Hindutva people. I had only one encounter, and that also from a social worker who claimed she was helping society. And one day, that was the only time I heard, she said, oh, I come from a religious, my parish is not going to support it or something. I was shocked. She said, no, personally, I have no problem, but then I'll get into trouble in the community I live in. And that was the only encounter I had which was negative. One religious family, but otherwise, no.
Excellent. And so you've written a book on marriage, your latest book, right? 100 Stories. So does it also have references to same gender?
So what happened is, before Section 377, when all these cases were happening, I got very upset when the Delhi High Court judgment was overturned. It was my birthday on the day in which it overturned. And it was the one time in my life I think I really burst into tears. It was just so horrifying that something which seemed just seamless was blocked by an idiot. And I can say it because we know that he just did it for his own image. There was no legal reason to do it. and caused so many trouble. So I decided to write extensively. I said, how do I use my knowledge to talk and change people's opinions? So I wrote on culture. I wrote my book, the famous book called Shikhandi, which was a collection, because everybody said not part of Indian culture. I said, okay, let me show you it's part of Indian culture. I wrote a book called Pregnant King. So it began by writing fiction. The Pregnant King this is the Hindi version of it, recently released. And I wrote it in first fiction, then I wrote non-fiction, and I didn't come out. It came out after Section 377. And now this marriage conversations are going on. The court is talking. So everybody said, again, the government said that marriage should be between men and women as per our culture. And these people who talk about culture have never really read anything. So I said, okay, let me show you what Indian culture is. Let me put together 100 stories and show you that, well, it's not what you think it is. It's a very fluid and mature culture. You are immature. Your culture is mature. You are immature. Don't blame your mature culture and don't reduce your culture to something it is not. The culture is smart. You are stupid. And that's the way I projected it. Because my life was that. I always knew that I was comfortable with being gay and I saw stupid people around me. My conflict was, how do I live in a world of stupidity?
I love it. I love it. We are learning, isn't it? It's so wonderful. No wonder you're a beautiful storyteller, Devdutt. I could just listen to you. Seriously, please get us more books. This 50 has to multiply into 500, hopefully. And marriage. I think I'm going to get a copy of it soon. It's available in different languages. You said Hindi as well as Marathi.
The marriage book has just been released because of lockdown. It's been a little bit of a promoting it has been a problem because of the lockdown issues. We did it within the lockdown. I was very happy that my publisher agreed to do it within the lockdown. So Rupa Publications just did it. So Kapish, thank you very much. And this supportive ecosystem that we live in is something that, how do you tell the world that we look at laws, and I think lawyers and judges are given too much importance. And these priests and these people in power. The common man is very simple. He needs to understand. He'll, of course, be scared. And you have to explain it to them with love and affection. And you find all kinds. I have seen parents who have been affectionate and loving to parents who have been nasty. And it doesn't matter what your ecosystem is, what your religious background is, what your economics is. As I said, from richest to poorest, you find all kinds everywhere. There is no statement. You can't be sure of anything. But humans are capable of kindness and love.
Yes, I agree. And Devdutt, is there a final message for our young audience? I'd love to have this new generation hear you say something.
I think be patient with your parents because they are children too. And it's your job to educate and raise them.
Beautiful. How beautiful. Devdutt, I could listen to you forever, like I said, and I would love to invite you back on another show because just as you're speaking, I'm thinking there's so much to talk about, in fact, about your books as well, if that's ever possible.
A session on that.
This is wonderful, and thank you so much for sharing so openly. And I can't thank you enough. I'm just absorbing it all, and I'm thinking, I'm glad to have someone like you who represents the real lived experiences of a person who has basically said, I'm going to use the word F it. That is what it is. Seriously, I didn't use the word, did I? So F it. No, really, because that's what it is. We have to first accept this and then we can change the narrative, right? And I keep saying that you change the narrative one story at a time. And these are the stories that will change the narrative. We have to keep this as a legacy for a future generation, Devdutt, and thank you. And Herbal Theory is one of our partners. They're a gifting partner. I hope you like beautiful scented candles,
yes.
the organic. So they will send you a hamper. Nicola, thank you. And Anand, thank you. And Nicola has been doing all the back-end work. She's still recovering from her health issues. And thank you so much. And audience, thank you very much. Any thoughts, feedback, please write to us at theviewsroom@gmail.com and we will respond to you. I'm totally out now. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, YouTube channel for all these coming out stories. Please subscribe to Raga Olga D'silva. Remember, closets are for clothes, not to hide your truth. Signing out at Totally Out Now. You're watching Coming Out Stories from India, presented by The Views Room. Thank you.